This video is sponsored by Imperial Gaming and Club.
Show you how to get paper, boy. Show you how to get to that shit, stack it up real high, real high. See the hate in your eye, but I can't tell just what you hating for. See you over there hating, but I don't really know what you hating for, bro. Never really pay attention to what they doing, I just ignore. I don't even really pay attention, man. I'm Stevie Wonder to all that shit. Stop no talking, let your progression, they call the noise. You ain't gotta prove shit to me, prove it to yourself, yeah. Boy.
What's up, Paper Gang? My name is PaperYGO, and welcome to an interview on the channel. This is a very exclusive and special interview that we're doing. I am here with Kelly Vance. She is a judge for Grandmaster Games. You can go check them out on Discord. I will leave the link down in the description box below. Kelly, how are you doing today, my friend?
Yeah, I am doing really great. Thanks for having me.
Oh, of course. It's such a pleasure to have you. Now, first and foremost, so who are you and what are you here to do today?
Like you said, my name is Kelly Vance, and I use she, her pronouns. I am an RC2 certified judge in the Akemi Judge program, and basically I'm here to answer some questions that you have about judging and kind of how that plays into the Yu-Gi-Oh experience.
That's wonderful. Yeah, and as Kelly and I were chatting about before, I feel like all too much we get the perspective of a player on YouTube from Yu-Gi-Tubers, and I kind of wanted to delve in and see if I could ask a certified judge some questions, because I'm sure that players that are, especially new players who are kind of skeptical on the rules and maybe don't know the ins and outs of the game and kind of the nuances, would love to hear from a judge herself. So I just want to say, first and foremost, thank you so much for joining me. It is my pleasure to have you here, and thank you for being so receptive to me reaching out to you. I also want to give a big shout out first and foremost to my sponsor, Imperial Gaming Collectibles. Shout out to you, Art, Tiger, Alex. You guys are the best in the game. You have all the accessories and cards that we need to build our decks, and you guys are so helpful. So I appreciate all that you do for me as a content creator. Big shout outs to you guys. Kelly, are there any shout outs that you would like to give before we get going?
Yeah, I would like to start out by shouting out Grandmaster Games. I sometimes judge their online tournaments. That's the main locals I've been to for as long as I've been playing competitively. They are a very great community. Definitely go to their Discord below. It's a wonderful locals, and it can be very sweaty at times. I'd also like to shout out just the judge program in general. Everyone in I've never had a bad experience in the judge program. All of the people, from the top to the bottom, they're all great. Special shout out to Julia, who's the head of the judge program at Konami. She's wonderful. That's a name that you're probably going to hear a lot if you're ever a Yu-Gi-Oh judge, if you ever become a Yu-Gi-Oh judge. And also just shout out to all the online communities I'm a part of. The social aspect of Yu-Gi-Oh is so important, especially in this in the time of COVID-19 and this last couple of years. Being able to talk to people online about Yu-Gi-Oh has been such a blessing. So.
That's so wonderful, Kelly. Thank you so much for those kind words. And you just reminded me, I want to give a big shout out to all of my friends that have helped me to grow as not only as a duelist, but as a person and as a friend. I love you guys with all my heart. There's so many of you to name. I can't name all of you in this short video, but thank you guys so much. And without further ado, what do you say we get right into it?
Sure, let's go.
All right. So first and foremost, why don't you tell us a little bit about yourself, how you got into Yu-Gi-Oh, and your experiences in the game thus far?
So yeah, my history with the game probably starts like a lot of people my age, in their early to mid 20s, where I got into it in second grade. I didn't know how to play. I just basically collected the cards. My friends played. My friends and I played what was definitely not Yu-Gi-Oh, just some summoning monsters, being oh yeah, this, and then we'd have fields of 15 monsters, and, it just completely breaking all the rules, just classic playground Yu-Gi-Oh. But yeah, around this time I didn't actually start watching the anime until Yu-Gi-Oh GX, but then after that kind of fell off for a while. Until later in high school, actually, where one of my friends got me, I started getting back into it with one of my friends in high school, and then actually my first roommate in college, he was also really into Yu-Gi-Oh, and so we played a bit there, but the only issue was, I had, the second structure deck ever released, and he had Monarchs. This is 2016.
Nice.
So I got my butt kicked all the time. But this really did kind of inspire me to kind of look into the game some more, look into how things are nowadays. Like I said, this was 2016, so it was right in the middle of, right near the end of the Pendulum era, and just started looking into what the meta was. Found some Yugi tubers that I enjoyed watching, and yeah. then I started playing competitively in 2019 after originally going to Grandmaster Games for a Smash tournament of all things.
Nice.
But yeah, so I've really only been playing like seriously in 2019. Soon after I started playing, I took the RC1 and PC1 judge tests and became a certified judge. My first event that I judged was later that year. Just a few regionals, and then obviously COVID happened, and but then I've been judging a lot of online events during COVID, and nowadays, I'd say I'm not like. I'm pretty happy with how I am as both a judge and a player right now. So, yeah.
That's so wonderful. Thank you so much for kind of delving in depth there and giving us like a very rich history of your experience with Yu-Gi-Oh. So I can attest to this, being in the Grandmaster Games Discord, that you are a very well respected judge in the Discord. And I'm just curious, so what are some of the things that you think make a good Yu-Gi-Oh judge?
I think that the first thing that you need to realize as a judge is that judging isn't really about ruling knowledge and policy adherence. It is about, it's first and foremost, it is a customer service position.
Mm-hmm.
Like, you are there to make sure that everyone there is having a good time. While ruling knowledge and knowledge of the policy does help in this regard, because obviously the rulings and following the rules and following policy tends to lead to the best playing experience. If you're not good at talking to people, if you're not good at wording things in a way so that people can really clearly understand you, that is a skill that you will really need to work on before actually really getting into judging. Like, first and foremost, that is the most important thing. As long as you are nice and assertive and you are confident in what you're saying and you know your stuff when it counts, you're going to be a good judge.
Well, that's wonderful. Yeah, I actually had never looked at it like that it's as much a customer service position as it is a judging position, because yeah, it is important for the duelists to have a great time at the events, and you know, part of the kind of intrigue when it comes to Yu-Gi-Oh is kind of the grandeur and the grandiose and having a really good time and making it seem like a really big event. So I think you guys do a great job of that. Follow-up question there is what's like the most interesting or strange judge call that you've ever gotten?
I can't really go into heavy detail about specific judge calls from an event. The judge program policy is that talking about penalties and judge calls that took place at the event outside of the event is frowned upon. There were multiple times that I did something as a judge where if I talked about it outside of the event, like, it could get either me, a different judge, or even a player like harassed. And like, these weren't even necessarily mistakes or anything, they were just unfortunate situations that happened. So it is just, in general, it is policy to not talk about it at all. I will say, though, just as a more general kind of ruling that I've actually not had a judge call about yet, but will probably come up any time now, is that in February of 2022, in the OCG, Necro Valley changed how it works again.
So please enlighten us. How did Necro Valley change once again? And to our viewers who don't know, maybe some of the newer duelists that are watching this video, Necro Valley is a card that has been errata, 3 times?
It's been errated 14 times. But I will say, this doesn't come from an errata. It is just a kind of change in how the OCG text is being interpreted. How it currently works, and how it works in the TCG, is that the TCG version says negate any card effect that would move a card in the graveyard to a different place, right?
Mm-hmm.
That is not how it works. Previously, in the TCG and in the OCG, actually, if you had a card like Altergeist Protocol up that said activated effects of Altergeist cards cannot be negated, Necro Valley obviously won't go into effect because it does say negate the effects.
Right.
But now, with how it works in the OCG nowadays, it says, instead of negate the effects of cards that would move things from the graveyard, it says effects that would move things from the graveyard do not apply. If you are playing Necro Valley at an event, now more than ever before, please, please, please ask your head judge how they're going to rule, how it works, because just to kind of go back to that example earlier with the Altergeist Protocol, now in the OCG, if Altergeist Protocol is face up and you activate Marionetter targeting any Altergeist card, the Altergeist card that it targeted will be sent to the graveyard, but the monster you targeted won't be revived.
Wow.
Because the effect cannot apply to the card in the graveyard, whether protocol is face up or not. Please ask your head judge. There are times where head judges do follow OCG rulings before following TCG rulings, so please ask your head judge about Necro for the love of God, for everyone's sake.
Yeah, that's definitely important, and especially again for the newer duelists, when you're at an event and you're concerned about something or you have a question, please just raise your hand and call a judge. Do not assume anything. You don't want to get outplayed just because of a ruling that you weren't sure of, and of course you don't want your opponent to cheat you first and foremost. So definitely, and of course, if you have a question based on what the judge you've called has said, you can always appeal that ruling to the head judge, as Kelly mentioned before. So following up from here, another question I have for you is, do you have any advice for aspiring Yu-Gi-Oh judges?
So the first step to becoming a Yu-Gi-Oh judge is to take the RC1 and PC1 tests. These are available online. If you just Google Konami Judge Program, it's like the first result. It will give you the details about the test, to give you all the resources that you need, which for RC1 and PC1 is just the basic rule book, the policy document, and the penalty guidelines. After you do that, it might take some time, but you will eventually be put on the official judge list. This is the list that JYA uses to call judges for events that Konami runs directly. If you want to judge a YCS or a remote duel extravaganza or like any big event like that, after you take RC1 and PC1, you will be getting emails about these events, and you can apply that way. If that's the only way that you're going to judge events, you probably won't get chosen very often, because in general, in order to get chosen for those events, you need to have experience first. The best way to get experience in that case is to judge regionals. Regionals are run by companies other than Konami, but they are officially sanctioned by Konami. So if you happen to know what company is running regionals in your area, then just try to find a way to get in contact with that company. If you go to a locals, the people that are in charge of your locals should have some information to help you. You can also just ask to volunteer to judge your locals sometimes. But just keep getting that experience. Talk to other judges. If you have, like, there are a ton of ways that you can talk to other judges online. There's a Facebook group, there's a ton of Discords, and these resources are invaluable. You will just being able to absorb the information from other judges just on these online forums is one of the main ways that I learn certain rulings, honestly. Just get connected, judge some regionals, apply for every event you can, and yeah, you'll be judging in no time.
That's great advice. And yeah, as you touched upon, Yu-Gi-Oh is entirely a community-based game. It completely evolves around the player base and the judge base. It's a game that's really helped to connect people all around the world. So it really is a community-oriented game, and the best way to become a better player and a better judge is to immerse yourself in that community. What's an example of a judge call that comes up all the time, and what would be the proper ruling for that judge call?
I would say that there are probably two main ones that come up a lot. The first one is just a bunch of interactions between the Eldritch deck and Infinite Impermanence.
Mm-hmm.
So first off, if Eldritch the Golden Lord is summoned off of its own effect and has the effect applied where it gains 1,000 attack and cannot be destroyed by card effects, if you negate its effects afterward, it will not lose the attack boost and will still be indestructible by card effects, because that effect is a effect that has applied to it already, and it isn't an effect that only applies to Eldritch. It can apply to any zombie monster that you saw summon up from the hand off of Eldritch's effect. That is one important thing. The other important ruling between Infinite Impermanence and the Eldritch deck is if you activate Infinite Impermanence in the same column as the Eldritch trap monsters, the continuous traps that are treated as traps while still on the field, they will stay in the spell and trap zone, and if they were already summoned, they will go back to the spell and trap zone.
Mm-hmm.
And they will stay there after Infinite Impermanence stops applying. They'll also still stay there. They will just stay face up in the back row, and they will not be able to move from there until like something else moves them there. Those are probably two things that come up a lot. A lot of people try to negate Eldritch in order to have its attack get reduced, and a lot of people don't know that interaction between when trap monsters have their effects negated. Right. Probably the second thing that comes up a lot, though, is Verite Anaconda. Even if Predaplant Verite Anaconda sends a fusion card like Fusion Destiny or Red Eyes Fusion to the graveyard, that you would, if those cards were activated by themselves, you would be able to Ash Blossom in response to it. You can't Ash in response to Verte because Verte's effect doesn't have anything on it that Ash Blossom would be able to negate. It only will have that after it starts resolving, and its effect is then becomes the effect of the fusion spell. And once an effect starts resolving, you can't activate anything until the chain fully resolves. So.
Right, and I think that that's something that, you know, a seasoned player like me or you know, definitely already knows, but for a newer player, you know, that's a really important interaction, especially because Verte Anaconda is such a prominent card in today's metagame, and Eldritch, of course, is a very prominent archetype in today's metagame. So those are two really big things, and I'm sure, you know, viewers will benefit from hearing that from you, so I do appreciate that. Moving on, I know in Yu-Gi-Oh! The majority of the community that I've experienced thus far has been friendly and very community-oriented, but of course there are some players that you do come across who seem angry or irate. How would a judge deal with an irate duelist at an event?
Like I said earlier, judging is first and foremost a customer service job. If as a judge you ever feel like you're ever in a situation that you don't think you can personally handle, it is perfectly fine to ask for help. When you're just starting out, you're going to be what's called a floor judge. A lot of the more like kind of difficult player management stuff is specifically not your responsibility as a floor judge. If you are judging remotely, you can just ping the leads that way. If you are judging in person, you can ask another judge to get one of your leads there. But in general, player management, especially like intense player management, like if a player is getting angry, that's like the responsibility of the leads and the head judge. As a floor judge, if you think you can handle it, it is perfectly fine for you to do so. You just have to remember to remain calm, stay confident, and if it ever does start getting out of hand, ask for help as soon as you can.
Wonderful. Yeah, that's great advice for especially people who are new into judging or aspiring judges. It's always important at any point in Yu-Gi-Oh! To ask for help because it's just such a big community. And of course, as you mentioned before, there's always someone you can ask for help. You don't have to go it alone, as they always say. One of the most controversial topics in Yu-Gi-Oh! Is the ruling regarding time. So why don't you explain what the current time rules are and how they've changed over past recent years? And if it were up to you, how would we deal with the time rules in Yu-Gi-Oh?
The change that you were referring to happened in 2018. Before 2018, time rules were when after 40 minutes passed in a round, players would stop what they were doing, and from that point on, they would get 5 more turns, with the current turn being turn 0. And then at the end of those 5 turns, life points will be compared, and whoever had the most life points would win that duel, and whatever the result of the match would be, then that's what would be reported as a result. It could be a draw if it was 1-1. It could be a win if it was 1-0. But like whoever had the more wins won the match. In 2018, though, the rules were changed so that instead of time being called, freezing play, and then having 5 more turns, now it's time is called, you freeze play, and the turn player has until the end of their current phase. And once they end their phase, then life points are compared, and the match is then decided as usual. And I can say definitively, as a player, there are definitely times where I've been frustrated by the time rules. Especially as someone who plays a lot of control decks, my favorite decks are like Guru, Phantasm Spiral, Trap Shit All. My games always go slow. The 40 minutes happens a lot. There are definitely times where I was in a winning position, but like I activated Solemn Strike, and I'm just lower than my opponent, and it sucks. As a player, I can understand a lot of the frustration that people have with the time rules. I never experienced the old time rules because, like I explained earlier, I started playing in 2019, but I have been burned by the current time rules plenty of times to understand the frustration. Mm-hmm. I will, however, say, as a judge, the time rules are amazing. At the start, it was kind of a little rough because there was still no precedent held on like what would happen if someone declared battle phase like right when time ended. And so there were definitely a lot of rough patches at the start. But now that we have the precedent, we have the policy in place to know what to do when situations like that come up, tournaments run so smoothly. After time is called, there's no longer like 20 minutes of people just playing Yu-Gi-Oh until the next round. Now, when time is called, there's at most like a few time extensions. Maybe like someone had a 10-minute time extension from a deck check, and once those are done, then usually the match just has like a couple minutes, and then we're off to the next round. Now, like, rounds last like an hour max, like for most of the time in person. There can be like a couple hiccups if it's like the first round, there's like a late registrations and stuff like that. Like if anyone's been at any of the remote duel extravaganzas, they know that round one can take a couple hours to get done. After that, the rounds run super smoothly. I will say though, I think what they're doing in Charlotte this current weekend, as of recording, it is the 8th. Charlotte is the 9th and 10th. I think that extending the time to 45 minutes is an excellent solution. Both from playing and judging, I don't think that there have been many matches at all where if we had those 5 extra minutes, it wouldn't have been decided. Mm-hmm. So, like, I think just adding the extra 5 minutes will get rid of most of the problems I have as a player and won't exacerbate any of the problems that come up as a judge.
Right, because you hear so many stories, especially when I'm at locals. I know that I hear a ton of stories from my fellow duelists about how, oh my goodness, if I only had just the one more minute, I could have gone into this phase and I could have attacked you. It's not something where you would have needed 10 extra minutes to decide the duel. It's something where even just one more minute would have allowed the duelist whose turn it was to make an extra action and to decide the duel in their favor instead of getting burned by the clock. So I think you explained that very eloquently, Kelly, and yeah, I would have to agree with you that I think what they're doing in North Carolina with the 5-minute extension is a really great kind of experiment. It remains to be seen how it's going to translate over into the game, but I think it's a really good idea, and I think generally in the community it was very much welcomed.
I will like to point out that what's happening in Charlotte is not necessarily going to be tournament policy going forward, but I would be really happy if it is.
I think a lot of people in the Yu-Gi-Oh community would share that sentiment with you, Kelly. Okay, so I've got 4 more questions for you, and then we're going to wrap it up. First one being, what are some of the things that you'd like to see change about the game of Yu-Gi-Oh? Not necessarily just about the card game itself, but, for example, perhaps in the community.
This is going to be kind of hard topic to get into, but the Yu-Gi-Oh community still has a pretty big misogyny, homophobia, and transphobia problem. I spend a lot of times in like queer-friendly Yu-Gi-Oh communities online, and I go to a wonderful locals where I have very few issues, and oftentimes it just like makes me completely forget that the community as a whole still has so much work that needs to be done in this regard. Like whenever I plan to go to a new locals, I always need to make sure to call ahead to make sure if they are queer friendly and woman friendly. I can't spend as much time as at some of the most popular like online forums because of all of like the ableist, homophobic, and transphobic slurs that make me uncomfortable. And like just the other day, like in these past couple weeks, there was that situation with the deck profile that just blew up on Yu-Gi-Oh Twitter. I don't know how much you spent time on there, and it was just completely like unacceptable what happened in that regard.
If you're interested, you can look into that for yourself, viewers.
But I have to say though that even though this is still a huge problem that we have a lot of work to do to fix, there is a lot of progress being made. Like we see a lot of pretty high-profile players, a lot of Yu-Gi-Tubers, a lot of judges are really open about being queer. We see a lot of really wonderful women in the community stepping up, and like think people like Fifth Rate Duelist, Elise, Annie Evie. These are all people that I look up to a lot. They're just amazing women in the community. Just a couple weeks ago, there was the Indie Regional that I judged, and there were over 600 people there at the regional, and 7 of them were trans, including me. Cool. And that like just completely blew my mind. And that was only the ones that I knew, because like that I was able to like that either came up to me and told me, or I was able to identify from like what they were like wearing a trans flag or something. There might have been more. There is a lot of wonderful things that are happening in the community. It is becoming a better place for queer people and women, and it is good to see. And I just want more to be done, because it's clear that we're not there yet. Also, ban Mystic Mind, bring Terraforming to do. The best pick again.
That's a hot take right there. Well, Kelly, thank you so much for opening up about that. I know that may have been difficult for you to delve into a little bit, kind of, and I just want to let you know that here on my channel, it is absolutely a safe space for you and for any of your peers. I am 100% an ally of yours and of your community, and I just want to give a big shout out to the entire community and let you know that I am here for you, my friends are here for you, and I surround myself with people that show love for others. Not only because it's the right thing to do, but because it makes me feel good to love others instead of hate others. And I would encourage you to try this out and to just try to see the person and not so much the identity of the person, the gender identity, sexual identity, or their preferences, because it really is about the person and making that connection. And you never really know when you might be able to have a great friend. You might be missing out on a great friend. So, yeah, thank you so much for delving into that. I think that was really important for you to say. Yeah, thank you so much for that. Just from the bottom of my heart, I appreciate you. But what sorts of things are judges looking for when you get deck checked? And how can duelists prepare to not get warnings or game losses? Because I know that in the middle of the duel, you may have your duel absolutely paused, and your judge may just grab your deck from you and say, hey, you're getting deck checked. So what are some of the things you're looking for?
The deck check is one of the most unfortunate places that game losses do happen. In general, I always encourage players before every single event, reread the policy documents, reread the penalty guidelines, before every single event, just to make sure that any of your supplies don't break any of the rules that are written. The policy documents cover everything that you need to know. Make sure your deck list follows the thing, everything that's there, and you should be good there. I would just, if you want me to point out just a couple specific things, one, make sure that every card you write down on your deck list is clearly identifying exactly one card and leaves no ambiguity. For example, writing something like Ghost Ogre and just Ghost Ogre is acceptable because there's only one card in the game that has those two words in its name. However, there are times where on a deck list you will see something like Black Luster Soldier or Droll Bird or Long One. These are all things that appear in multiple cards. And in the case like Black Luster Soldier or Drollbird, those are actually unique cards in the game itself. So if you write that on your deck list, you need to be playing those cards. So if you write Black Luster Soldier instead of Black Luster Soldier Envoy of the Beginning, you need to be playing vanilla Black Luster Soldier in your deck list. Secondly, change your sleeves before every single event. Every single major event, at least. As most players can probably attest to, at least in my experience, I don't change my sleeves that often. I usually change them maybe once every few months. And as a result, when I'm changing my deck list around, some of my sleeves get more worn than others. So before I go to an event, I always make sure that all of my sleeves are uniform. And the best way to do that is just to re-sleeve the entire thing. Brand new sleeves, take them all out, put the new ones on. And that makes it so that all of your sleeves are the same. You won't get knocked for marked sleeves or anything like that, and you'll be good there. Probably the last thing that's important is to make sure that all of your materials, like dice, your deck box, your sleeves, your field centers, etc., they're all appropriate for the event. Judges can get pretty strict about what is appropriate at times, so just keep in mind that while a lot of the audience for Yu-Gi-Oh! Is young adults, and people in their 20s and 30s, there's still plenty of children playing the game. It is not something that you would think is kind of acceptable for a child to see, then it's not acceptable for the event. And probably those are the three big things I would just say to keep in mind when you're so that you can avoid penalties when you're getting deck checked.
Wonderful. Thanks so much for going into that. Final two questions. If you had to give my viewers one final note or quote or a piece of advice, either about Yu-Gi-Oh! Or about life in general, what would you say?
I'd say the biggest piece of advice I can give for Yu-Gi-Oh! Is no matter what you are doing at an event, whether you are a player, a spectator, a judge, a vendor, just someone walking by an event, always remember what your responsibilities are. Like I said earlier, read the penalty guidelines, read the policy documents, and if you know your responsibilities, you yourself can always help the event run even more and more smoothly that way. Like, one piece of advice I have specifically for people who go to an event and then drop and become a spectator, remember that spectators also have the responsibility to call a judge if they see something happen in a game that is not legal. That is probably one of the responsibilities that's often forgotten, and it is very helpful when a spectator comes up to me and says, hey, something happened in this duel, can you please get over here and like do something about it? And spectators have responsibilities too. Say one last thing, keep in mind, everyone at an event, we're all human, everyone makes mistakes, everyone has feelings, everyone has things going on in their life, so just be patient with everyone, whether it's a judge, your opponent, the vendor. Always be patient and be nice, be kind. Everyone's there to have a good time, including you. So
wonderful. That was very well said. I would completely agree with everything you just said. Just be kind, put your biases aside. We're there to have fun, and we're there to love each other first and foremost. So, and we're also there to play some Yu-Gi-Oh, as always. Kelly, is there anything else you'd like to add before we wrap this video up?
Sure. If you don't mind, I do have a Yu-Gi-Oh Twitter account that I use. It is at Yugioh Kelly. I mostly just tweet the decks that I play at locals, and retweet things that I think are funny and usually Yu-Gi-Oh related. So yeah, if you want to see some Subterror and Ghost Trick deck profiles, feel free to follow me on Twitter.
Wonderful. And what I'll do is I'll put your Twitter right up on the screen, like here or somewhere, and then I'll actually leave the link down in the description box below so that people can go check you out. Kelly, from the bottom of my heart, I appreciate you, and I thank you. Thank you so much for your time and for joining me here on my channel. It's been wonderful having you. You've been such a great help, and you've given us such great insight into the game of Yu-Gi-Oh! And to what it's like being a judge and the judge's perspective. So from the bottom of my heart, once again, thank you so much. As always, my name is Paper Yugioh. Stay getting that paper, and I will see you in the next video.
Every time I go down, every time I go down.